In this demo, we are going to learn how to do a frame animation in Photoshop. And this is just going to be the basics. There are two ways to animate in Photoshop. There is the frame animation method and the timeline or video timeline method. And they both have their benefits and detriments. All right, so to start with, we're going to make a really simple animation of an open ball bouncing in a cloud, flying across the sky, and then disappearing. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to open a new file in the default Photoshop size. And let's change the resolution from 300 to 72 pixels per inch. We want to make this a pretty small file because when we're animating, we actually have a lot more information because we're animating over a series of frames. And then let's call this frame anim demo, right? So frame animation demonstration. And I'm going to hit OK. And then I'm going to hit Command or Control 0 to make this the full size of the screen. And to start with, we need to set up all the controls. We need to get the windows open or the panes open that allow us to animate. And so to do that, we need to go up to Window at the top of the screen. And then we need to come down to Timeline. Now, if you have CS5 on your computer, I think one of you may, this is actually called animation rather than timeline. It has the same functionality more or less, but they just changed the name of it. I have no idea why. So click on the timeline. Now yours is going to look a little different because I've set mine up slightly different. So by default, this is what you should see. You should have this timeline pop up, this option to create a frame animation, and a drop-down arrow. The drop-down arrow, this is how we're going to be able to choose between the two different types of animation that you can do in Photoshop. We're going to start with Create Frame Animation. In order to create it, we need to click on the words Create Frame Animation. Click on this button. And now we've got one frame and we've got our background. We're going to start by using the brush tool to define the path we want our ball to take, right? So we want a bouncing ball, so we want it to maybe come in here from this side of the screen, bounce down, and then come back over to the other side. And so to do that, I'm going to leave the background as it is. I'm going to create a new layer. Right, so I've got layer 1 here. I'm going to use my brush tool. And I'm going to set the color to black if it's not already black. And then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and draw a little path like that. It doesn't have to be perfect, but this is just going to allow us to have some idea of where we want this ball to go. All right, so we've got layer 1. So let's go ahead and create one more layer. And this is the layer we're actually going to draw the ball on. And so let's choose a different color to draw the ball. We're going to start by, let's just go with red. It's here. Okay, and then I'm just going to draw a small ball. You can fill it in, you can leave it open. Maybe I'll fill it in this time because when I did the demo earlier I didn't, but let's go ahead and just paint this in. I'm not going to do too much extra work to it, right? We want this to be pretty simple. Maybe I can use my eraser, which is huge right now. Maybe I can use my eraser and put a little bit of a highlight on here, right? Make it look like this is a nice shiny ball. Who knows? Okay, so I've made my ball. And now I need to animate it. And there's several ways that I can do that. One of the simplest ways to show you how this animation technique works is to go down to the bottom of the screen, right? So we've got our timelines. We have one frame of animation right now, right? And that's all we've got. And so we need to create multiple frames in order to begin to move this. So I'm going to come down here to this thing that looks like the new layer option. It's the same icon for whenever you want to create a new anything in Photoshop. So I'm going to click on that. So now I've got 2 frames. And I'm going to actually grab my Move tool. I'm going to click on Show Transform Controls as well. And now in the second frame, with the second frame selected, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move this ball a little further down the path. Then create a new frame. And move this ball a little further down the path. And I'm going to do 2 or 3 more of these. Oops. so that when I start to animate this, you can actually see what's going on. So go ahead and let's start by just making this ball go down to about here. Okay, so I've currently got 6 frames that I've created, right? And what's happening is when I select this frame and create a new frame, it's going to put it to the right of this frame. So I've got these frames, now I need to let them play. So if I come down here, you'll see these icons here that look like play and fast forward and rewind options. So I'm going to hit play, right? And so right now, this is my animation. I've animated this ball moving across here. And usually we want this to loop, right? We're going to be making GIFs. GIFs do loop. And also having it loop makes it a lot easier to evaluate any issues you're having in your animation, right? You can watch it repeatedly and catch the issue and then fix it. So where it says once down here, if I click on this, I can go down to forever. Now if I hit play, it's just going to keep recycling those frames over and over and over again. So I'm going to stop that. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to continue to create new frames and pull this ball a little bit further down the line. So please go ahead and do the same. Okay. Now if I play my animation, my ball comes down, bounces, goes across. Now something you'll notice is it seems to be going slower and then faster, and it's lagging a lot. I'm going to uncheck Show Transform Controls, which should speed it up a little bit. But basically, Photoshop is drawing each of these images to the screen, and it's trying to do it as quickly as it can. And once we turn this into a GIF animation, it will animate much more quickly than it does in Photoshop. So that's something to be aware of. All right. So we've got this thing bouncing. Isn't that wonderful? All right, so now there's a couple things that, and I don't know why my computer's moving so slow, but oh well. So now if I pause this, there's a couple of things that we need to go over. First, let's go ahead and create a background for this. So I'm going to select the background layer. I'm going to use my gradient tool, and I'm going to choose the Chrome gradient, right? This gives like some cheeseball 70s sci-fi text, yeah, Chrome background, I don't know. But it also looks like a really simple landscape. So I'm going to hit OK after I select Chrome. I'm going to start from the top of the page and just kind of draw a straight line down to the bottom of the page. Right? And now I've created my Chrome gradient. It looks like I've got earth and sky. And now I can have my ball, right, bounce along this line. But there's some things here, right? I don't know. Maybe this is a bowling ball, and that's why it's having such a hard time. It doesn't deform at all when it hits the ground. I would like it to do that. And there's a couple other things I like to do. First, I can turn this off, right? Because we don't need that anymore. So I'm bouncing this guy along. Now, you'll notice that I turn the visibility off on layer 1, but it just blinks out of existence on the frame that I had selected when I turned the visibility off, but yet it's visible in all the other frames. So what I need to do is I need to be able to select all of the frames and then turn the visibility off once and for all. So to do that, I'm going to click on the layer panels here, or on the panel menu, right? It's over here, and this is the menu for the timeline. And I'm going to go to select all frames. And then I'm going to come up here, and you'll see the visibility is off, but that's because it's off on this one frame that has this white boundary around it, right? And that's the frame that I actually have selected and I'm currently looking at. And so it's off there, but it's on elsewhere. So I just need to toggle it on and off. So it's visible everywhere. Now it's invisible everywhere. And you can see the thumbnails have updated to show that it's invisible. So now if I play my animation, right, I've got my ball going along my line that is no longer there. Now, something else I want to do, and I'm going to find, this is my lowest frame. For me, frame 10 is the one where it's closest to the ground. What I'd like to have happen here is for this ball to smush, right? So maybe I can transform it. So I'm going to use the selection tool. I'm going to check mark show transform controls. And then I'm going to select layer 2 on the layers panel. So I have this object selected. And then maybe I'll go ahead and smush this guy. And then once I smush him, I'm going to have to double click, right, in order to set the transform. And as soon as I do that, you'll see one of the limitations of working with frame animation, right? I can move the object in each frame independently. However, I cannot transform the object in each frame independently, right? Because I squished the ball in frame 10, I squished it across all the frames. So I'm going to go ahead and undo that, or step backwards. Oh, and I've actually stepped backwards 2 steps, it looks like. So now I have to go back and select all my frames, turn the toggle visibility on and off. There we go. Okay, so I can't smush it in one frame and not have it smush anywhere else. So what I need to do is I need to duplicate this layer, right? I need to duplicate the layer, and then I need to, because then I could have a copy of this that I could smush in one frame. We're going to right click on here. We're going to go to duplicate layer. Layer 2 copy, sure. This is a small enough file that it doesn't matter what we name these things. So I've got layer 2 copy, and in this frame, frame 10, I want layer 2 copy to be smushed. Right? So I'm going to smush it down. So now you'll see that I actually have layer 2 still visible in this frame. And so after I've set this transform by double clicking on it, I'm going to go ahead and turn the visibility off of layer 2. So now you can see that in this frame layer 2 is off, but in every frame I've got this smushed one. So what I need to do is I need to select, and there's 2 ways I could do this, but the easiest is I'm going to go ahead and select frame 1. I'm going to hold down Shift and click on the frame before the frame where I want the ball smushed. And I'm just going to toggle the visibility of, oops, not layer 2, sorry, of layer 2 copy. So I'm going to turn the layer 2 copy visibility off. So now layer 2 copy is only visible in this frame. And then for all of these following frames to the end of the animation, all the way to frame 20, I am also going to shut off the visibility of layer 2 copy. So now if I play my animation, right, I've got this one frame and it's pretty quick where the ball just totally smushes. Ideally, I would add a couple frames in there. All right, so if I wanted to add more of a slow smush in here, right, it probably needs a couple more frames of animation. It's really quick. I would actually have to duplicate one of these 2 layers again and then create a new frame between the 2. So I'm going to pause this real quick. I'm going to jump here, right? So say between frame 9 and 10, I'm going to need to duplicate this object one more time and smush it about halfway if I want this to look right. So I'm going to go ahead and select frame 9. I'm going to come in up here. I'm going to say new frame, and then I'm going to get an exact copy of frame 9. The position of everything's going to be the same. I'm going to select layer 2. I want to duplicate this layer. I'll hit OK. I've got layer 2 copy. And so in this case, what I want this to do is move down and over a little bit. And then I want to smush it about halfway. Double click it, and then I have to do the same situation, right? It's visible in all the layers. So I need to go in it's visible in all the frames. I need to go through every frame that I don't want to have this visible in, and I need to select them all and then turn the visibility off. Right? And then in this one frame where I have both visible, I need to turn the visibility of layer 2 off, right? That's the default one. So now if I turn my transform controls off and hit play, right? I've got a much smoother animation. I've added that one frame. The ball kind of deforms a little bit and then fully deforms and then returns to its normal shape. So I could do the same thing on the other side, but this shows you some of the basics of working with this, adding a frame in the middle of the mix, and the fact that if you want to transform the object that you're animating in some way, you need to duplicate the layer and only have that transform visible in the frame that you want it to be visible in, and turn the visibility off for all the other frames, right? And this isn't the opacity. This is actually turning on and off the visibility with the eye icon here. Okay, so we've done this. I'm going to pull back to the very beginning frame. And there's one other thing you need to be aware of. So layer 2 is the one that has most of the ball animation on it. And there's a few settings here that are new when you're working with frame animation. And one of these is this Propagate Frame 1 check box. And then there's the Unify, where you can unify the layer position, unify layer visibility, or unify layer style. Now, let's create a sun layer just to show you what I mean. So I'm going to go ahead and create one more new layer. I am going to change the color to yellow because that's what our sun looks like, right? Nice and bright. And I'm going to come up here and I'm going to use my brush tool and I'm going to draw this beautiful sun in the sky, right? Maybe we'll have little rays coming off too, because why not? Okay, so we've got our sun. Now, this sun should be visible in every single layer. Let's just make sure. Yep. Okay. So the sun's visible in every layer. So I'm going to click on this Unify Layer Position. And when I do that, and then use my Move tool, wherever I move the sun, right, unlike the default situation, right, wherever I move the sun now, it moves in every single frame. Right? And it's in front of the ball, which is kind of funny. Right? But so wherever I move the sun, it moves in the same place in every frame. Right? We could do the visibility as well. Not going to worry about that, and not going to worry about the style either right now. But essentially, it locks everything together. Now, the other thing is the Propagate Frame 1. So instead of dealing with layer 2, I'm going to make the sun animate as well. Right? So I'm going to go first to frame 2. I'm going to pull the sun down a little bit. I'm going to go to frame 3, pull the sun down a little bit more. Go to frame 4, pull the sun down even further. Go to frame 5. The sun is not obeying the laws of physics, but that's okay. And we're just going to go down several different. I'm just going to keep going until I get to about frame 10. Right? And then it's just going to pop up there and stay in the sky. Okay. So that's enough, right? So now what's happening is, right, the sun is going down in front of the landscape. Maybe we're looking at this from behind the sun, which doesn't make any sense either. All right, so the sun is going down. Now, I can adjust any of these frames. Say I can grab frame 2, I could scoot this over, right? And it's not going to change anything except the position of frame 2. However, if I select frame 1 and I grab the sun and I pull it across the sky, you'll see that when I first do it, it only moved frame 1. Now, this is kind of buggy and it kind of drives me crazy because now if I select frame 1 again and pull the sun into the middle of the sky, it's going to move the entire animation, right? So now, instead of the sun falling down over here, it's shifted the entire thing. And that is because, let me go ahead and pull this guy back over here, right? So everything scoots back where it's supposed to be. That's because this Propagate Frame 1 option is checkmarked, right? That means that if I select frame 1, and I don't know why it didn't work, but that means if I select frame 1 and I move the object in frame 1, it's going to move the entire animation with it, right? Everything will move relative to wherever I move this in frame 1. If I uncheck this, then that gives me the freedom to move frame 1 wherever I want it to, right? So I can pull the sun over here, I can hit play, right? And now the sun's back aligned somewhat where it was. Right, so those are a couple of the other options that we've got. We're going to get into some more advanced options here in the next demo that we do on frame-based animations, which will show us how to take video frames, bring them in as layers, and then create a video sequence that kind of bounces back and forth, right? It plays forward and then it plays in reverse. And so that's the next frame animation tutorial we will do. I would like you to experiment with this. Just because we've used hand-drawn objects does not mean that you cannot select, say, Miley Cyrus's head and have it fly across the screen, or turn green, or do whatever you want to it.